Thousands of people have mysteriously vanished in America's wilderness under strange and unexplainable circumstances. Most cases remain unsolved. What happened? Where did they go? Locations unknown.
Thousands of people have mysteriously vanished in America's wilderness. Join us as we dive into the deep end of the unexplainable and try to piece together what happened. You are listening to Locations Unknown.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Locations Unknown. I'm your solo host, Mike Van de Bogert. Joe is not with us this week. We'll both be back next week with a brand new case. This week, got a fun episode for you. So during our live stream last week, our 4.5-hour marathon, talking marathon, we did a very interesting and fun interview with Tara and Nancy from Crime Off the Grid. They are retired law enforcement park rangers, and they have some amazing stories to tell. I wish we would have had longer to talk with them. So in the future, we'll be doing another episode with a much longer interview because I'm sure they have so many more stories they could tell us. But just some really funny stories. There's a story of one of them. They tased this gentleman who was probably inebriated multiple times, and one of them ended up riding him like a horse. So you're going to have to listen to the interview. It's some really funny stuff, and it sounded like a really cool job. So before we get going, I want to give some Patreon shout-outs to new listeners. So thank you to Ralph Ferguson, Amy Creek, Anna Gilmore, and Heather Auger. Thank you so much for supporting the show. We say this every week, but we could not do this without you. Your support means more than you'll ever know. We use that money to get better equipment, better software. Also, we can bring you a better show every week. So thank you so much for supporting the show. If you're a new listener, we have other ways you can support the show. So you can obviously join our Patreon channel. You can join YouTube memberships, premium subscriptions on Apple, premium subscriptions on Spreaker. And eventually we will have a show or a store, new store coming out that'll have a lot of cool swag or merch that you can buy. And for a limited time, we'll be running a special for all of our supporters. You can buy anything on the store at cost. So whatever it costs us, you'll get. We also have some really cool shows on our network Unknown Media Group that you can check out. So Peanut Butter and Mountain Podcast, Off the Trails, The Weirdos We Know, Who Runs This Park, and Crime Off the Grid. I urge you to go and check out all of those shows. They're all very interesting, and they get 2 thumbs up from me and Joe. So finally, as many of you know, we did a 4.5-hour live stream last week. It was exhausting. Never in my wildest dreams did I ever think talking for 4.5 hours could be so exhausting, but I was drained by the end of it. But we had a really fun live stream. We spent an hour talking with the hosts from National Park After Dark. They recently went on a big trip to Antarctica, and they have a new podcast out that they talked about. Then we spoke with the hosts from Crime Off the Grid, which you're about to hear in a minute. And we also tried to speak with our Patreon supporters, but we were having some audio issues, so we apologize again to everyone who supports the show. We will do another members-only video call and dedicate the whole episode to that at some point here in the near future. We also spent a good amount of time listening to a lot of voicemails that we've received, which, by the way, you can call our show at 208-391-6913. or text the show and leave a voicemail. And we wrapped the show up talking to Evan Stone, the one and only, and we went through, for people that didn't know him, kind of the history of who he is. He's an extreme filmmaker, got his roots in the music industry in the 90s with MTV, and he's been the director of photography on a ton of shows, like his most famous one is Expedition Unknown with Josh Gates, and he went through a lot of the different places he's been through that show, and just a lot of really cool stories. He's big into ghost hunting now, and Joe and I have been trying to get him to get out here to Wisconsin. Joe's company Joe works for owns an old hospital with a psychiatric wing that is absolutely terrifying. I've been in it at night with the lights off. If you're afraid of places like that, I would not recommend it, but so we're hoping this summer to get him up there to film an episode for ghost hunting, because I really believe there's ghosts, even though I don't believe in ghosts, but if they exist, they're there. So, and if you'd like to check out the whole 4.5 hour live stream, it's on our YouTube channel, it's on our Facebook page, it's on X, so lots of different places you can check it out. It was a lot of fun. We don't live stream very often for this exact reason. It's a lot of things can go wrong while you're live streaming, and you have to we don't have a staff or a crew here to deal with stuff when it's live. It's me and Joe. So we would have to figure that stuff out on the fly. And there's times where we were having some technical difficulties, but we kept the streaming running the entire time. So you can watch it in all its glory and fast forward through some of the parts where Joe and I are trying to fix things. So it was very fun. It was to celebrate this amazing studio that we're going to have to leave here soon. So the building we're in is being fully renovated into apartments and condos, so they're kicking us out, giving us the boot. And our next studio location is, funny enough, unknown. So we have a couple places we're looking at, so we don't actually know where we're going yet. But the show will not stop one way or the other. We will be recording new episodes throughout all of this, so stick with us, and who knows where we'll end up, but we will find somewhere to continue this show, because I have so much fun doing this. I can't imagine not doing this. So with all of that said, Joe's not here this week. I actually don't know where he is, but I just know he's not here. But we will be back in full force next week with a brand new episode, and I'm excited to get back in the studio, get back to doing what we do. So without further ado, I present you the interview we did with the hosts of Crime Off the Grid.
In radio voice, and we're back. All right, we're gonna bring you in, Tara and Nancy. Hello.
Hey,
we had pizza delivered by my wife and son because we're just gonna be here for a while.
Yum.
That was like perfect timing with the Jay the dog comment.
I felt so guilty about that for years and years, and then when I saw that they had a Patreon episode, and I joined their Patreon just to see what they said about Jade the dog, and they told it exactly correct. They didn't miss anything, anything incorrect. But I felt guilt over that for days and days and years, and then I forgot my trauma until I listened to that again, and then I just felt like I had to confess. So that's why I sent that message in. I felt like I had to confess. I felt horrible about it. It was a horrible head-on collision, chaos, life flights, all of that kind of stuff was going on. And I was going to take the dog back to my house because I was one of the only few people that had a fenced-in yard. And she broke free because her kennel was broken. Anyway, that's that story. So I got it off my chest.
So even though a tragic story, it's just shows kind of how small this world is.
Yeah.
Covered, we have them on. You're actually the person that was involved in it. It's actually crazy. Out of all the negative of that case, it's really cool that this happened. It all led to this. So with that, Tara and Nancy, would you want to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your show?
Well, and your history. I'm really, once we get in this, hearing about your time in the National Park Service. So,
well, I've already been talking, so Nancy, I'll let you go for it.
My name's Nancy, and I had a career with federal government, both in the Park Service and the Forest Service for about 32 years. Most of my time was working in Yellowstone with Tara. So we've known each other for a very long time.
Long time.
And it's just been a great career for us both.
Yeah. Yeah. So we both did law enforcement rangering, and almost my entire career was in Yellowstone. Nancy moved on to bigger and better things. I stayed in Yellowstone. And then the last 5 years of my career, I worked strictly with victims of crime
Okay.
in the national parks.
So what, obviously you host the show Crime Off the Grid. So what got you into wanting to do that? I know Joe and I, the first couple of years we did it was brutal. No one listened. A lot of work for, 5 listeners.
You gotta love doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
yeah, what made you want to transition to, from what you did in the Park Service to doing a podcast?
Well, I started the podcast, but I think right before I retired, a lot of us who have loved our careers, we leave kind of kicking and screaming, not really wanting, we age out in law enforcement in the National Park Service. And so I'm like, I'm just not done. I'm not done. And I had just really maybe a month or two earlier started listening to a true crime podcast. Besides, I've always watched, every documentary, but I'm like, there are all these stories out there in the National Park Service. And I had not discovered National Park After Dark at that point. I didn't even know they existed.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's these stories that need to be told. And there's a whole bunch of reasons. But one of the things is rangers do some crazy stuff. They risk their lives. They do a lot of things that you cannot make up. Yet people just assume they're that person who's at the entrance station with a map saying, "Welcome to Yellowstone." Or, you see rangers pointing at things on the, outside the geyser basin or whatever.
Yeah.
That's not what we're talking about when we're talking about, a lot of crime. And then in national parks, because, and then I named it Crime Off the Grid. I don't know if is that a good name? I don't know. But we didn't want to just cover national parks. We wanted to do, places, wild places.
Well,
I can't speak for Nancy.
And I got going because Tara is a wonderful travel agent, and she booked me on a guilt
She booked you on a what? It broke up.
on a guilt trip.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, I didn't have a partner to begin with. And so I was trying to get all these rangers or these other people to please do one with me. And then they would disguise their name because they're still working. And there's, that might have been frowned upon with ethics, blah, blah, blah. Nancy, we're exactly the same age. She was retired. I'm like, how about you do one with me? And then I'm like, how about you do another one with me? How about can you just be my partner?
Well,
that's awesome.
I have so many.
I told her it sounded like a job, and
Yeah.
it has turned into a job.
It is a job. Yeah.
It's like an investment. There's a lot of work and time you put in at the beginning, but it slowly pays off, kind of like a snowball rolling downhill. It picks up momentum as you go.
Yeah.
It is, yes.
But I have so many questions. There's probably not enough time for them. I'll try to be as quick as I can. But first of all, tell us some stories that you can talk about. I don't know what the rules are around that. While you were in law enforcement in Yellowstone, what were some of the crazy things you had to deal with on a day-to-day?
I think you're retired. Spill the beans.
No, exactly. We don't care. What are they going to do?
Yeah, right.
That's how we're doing this. Yeah. Well, okay. Can I just say this? Like Nancy, our careers went sort of different directions, in a way. Like Nancy, I'm just going to tell you, if you've listened to our podcast, if you might have heard us say WWND, what would Nancy do? She was a bad ASS as far as, and my kids, she could bench a house, she could whoop anybody if she had to. You want to call her for backup, seriously. And
Grizzly
so
bears fear her.
Yes, I'm sure. She's a taser instructor and all that. And I'll say just one of my crazier stories. And we did podcast on this where we both had a similar story that had to do with tasing people. And mine was in a campground, but literally we had 3 crazy guys that were trying to quote kill us and do damage to us with our AR-15s, blah blah blah, all kinds of stuff, and ended up we could tell that they weren't armed. We had to transfer to taser, blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry, I say blah, blah, blah. Anyway, long story short, we triple tased these guys at the same time, and they just went right at dusk. Nobody got that on a cell phone. I cannot believe that they didn't see the campers. But this is where I say, like, when you tase somebody, you need to bring them into control very, very quickly. And so I am tethered to a guy on the ground with a taser. There's another ranger standing there not doing anything. And then another ranger, we accidentally both tase the same guy. And I look, and this is happening in nanoseconds. I look, and they're just standing there like doofuses. And I'm like, WWND, whoa. And then so I jumped on. Anyway, I had to bring this big guy under control with cuffs because none of these other big rangers were doing. But that's my WWND.
That's fantastic.
What would Nancy do?
Breezed over the part where you like tased one guy twice.
Well, two rangers. Well, no, like we separated them. We distracted. There were 3 dudes. They were on leave from Afghanistan, Iraq, and their dad was a Vietnam vet, and they were under the influence of all kinds of things. And anyway, so they were holding arms like amoebas, coming after us, coming after us, and so we had a plan: distract, separate, and tase them. So we just 2 of us ended up tasing one guy, which is fine. It didn't make him hurt anymore.
Just sobered him up a bit.
Yes, hopefully.
That's amazing.
And mine, why we tased, I was at Mount Rushmore as a supervisory park ranger at the time. And we ended up tasing a guy that they had parked in a no parking area. And I got to tell you, and I was new to Mount Rushmore, and these guys were amazing. I mean, if there's a car out of place because it's an icon park, they were all over it. And so anyway, long story short on that, a guy comes up and he literally looked like Grizzly Adams. I mean, he was a mountain of a man, beard, mustache, I mean, the whole 9 yards, wearing Carhartts, bibs, and a jacket. And it was me and 2 other officers. And we ended up tasing him after. We got him on his knees. We're going to try and handcuff him. And he did a haymaker towards one of the other guys. And 2 of us went to pull our tasers. And the other guy pulled his first because I knew we were going to have to jump on him. And so anyway, tased him. He goes down to the ground. And I jump on his back. And I'm sure I look like this little ant on top of the back of him. But he's screaming like a girl. He does the full ride on the taser. And,
Hold on. So you're riding him while he's being tased?
Yes. So that's awesome. Taser
Your Mount Rushmore rodeo move?
It was. I could teach you things. I'm telling you. This guy is so big, we can't get the cuffs, one set of cuffs. So now we're having to take 2 sets out. So we hook a set of cuffs, one to his wrist, and then we hook our cuffs together, and then the other one has to go on his other wrist. Well, while you're trying to do that, he gets his wits about him, and he starts to stand up. This is where the real rodeo starts. So I happen to have my hand in between the wires. And so anyway, the ranger says, I'm going to tase you again. I look down at my hand, and I realize I'm going to get tased. So I quickly rip my hand out. Taser goes off like instantaneously. Guy starts screaming again, flops down on the ground, and we're able to handcuff him with 2 sets of handcuffs. And then we get him up, and he says to us, "Who are you people?" And so he had never been tased before. So I'm sure that was quite the event. And of course, he's got 2 little girls and his wife were there. And of course, they thought we shot him because, our tasers do look like weapons. And so anyway, it was quite the ordeal. But they had multiple garbage bags of stolen items from Walmart. And then they also had several precursors to making meth. And
that's too bad.
we were able to find a photo album of them doing their wares out in the woods. And
because of course, you gotta have
pictures
take pictures.
That, right?
Yeah, that's probably their Christmas card pictures.
Proud of yourself. And
So anyway, document yourself doing crimes.
Yeah,
that's right. So the wife and the husband went to jail. In the cover of darkness, I took the children to meet with social services, and they took the kids away. And so anyway, if we're lucky, I believe that gentleman is still in jail after he finished his South Dakota time. He went to California on some warrants. So my guess is he's probably,
And he can't
Probably
tell
still-
anybody how he got there. This lady.
No, this little bitty girl jumped on his back. Yeah.
So you're
Well, you know, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna real quick. So your role in the park really, you're like a hybrid role. So not only do you have to be like a park ranger that everyone probably, when you say park ranger, you think of the person, walking down the trail helping hikers
That's what, yeah.
with questions, but you're also basically a cop in the park.
Yes.
So you got
Yeah.
to so you also have to know how to handle yourself with criminals and drunk people, and
Yeah.
so that's pretty crazy that you're basically really like a hybrid role in the park.
And
Well,
most of the
go ahead.
time,
Yeah.
we, Tara and I mean, it wasn't unusual for us to go from medical to law enforcement to medical
Yeah.
to law enforcement our entire shift, because that's
Yeah.
just what you had
Right.
to do back
Yeah.
then. We just wore so many hats that
Yeah.
we had to
You wear a
take
lot
care
of
of.
hats.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's cool. And I guess the medical side, that brings me into probably, some of your time, or I don't know how much your time was probably devoted to search and rescue operations.
Mhm.
Especially a park like Yellowstone probably has a lot of people in it, and probably a lot of people go missing and are found. But
Yeah.
yeah, tell us
Nancy and I
about
had
some of
talked
your
about this.
searches.
Yeah, we talked about this, and I can't remember. Somebody else had asked us this question. Yellowstone is not that big of a SAR park.
Okay.
For not like Yosemite, or as far as rescues, there's a lot of
Mhm.
searches, just not a whole lot of rescues. And Nancy and I were saying, like, most of the searches that at least I had been on, I think Nancy too was involved with water, and people going off a big waterfall, people going into a cold lake and never resurfacing. So sadly, a lot of our searches that we've been on resulted in not ever finding who we're looking for, because they were presumed dead. So
Yeah.
anyway, Yellowstone's different. It's not that big.
Or
of
it
a-
was a body recovery
Yeah.
once we did find them.
Yeah.
So yeah, we didn't do a lot of happy search and rescues.
yeah.
Okay. And did you ever, I know obviously Grand Teton is nearby Yellowstone. Did you ever, I know sometimes the parks other resources from different parks will come in to help with the search. Did you ever go on searches in another park to help them out?
I never went to Tetons.
Okay.
But I feel like I've been outside the park in the forest. Like, there's a lot of things that still go on. Yellowstone ecosystem is surrounded by national forests as well. And so I feel like I've been outside the park, but I could be getting confused with fires. We also do wildland fire,
Yeah.
EMS, wildland fire, search and rescue. But we do have, or I say we, like I still work there, do have a technical rescue team.
Mhm.
And occasionally there's, somebody tries to skirt down the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone, for example. It's also not a big climbing park. Where
Yeah.
Tetons is a big climbing park. They have, climbing rangers, but Yellowstone is like a big open Serengeti, and
Mhm.
with crazy water, rivers, cold lakes, and hazards that way. But
Yeah.
the things that Nancy and I think have been most involved in were crimes against people.
Okay.
And I dealt a lot with sexual assaults and domestic violence cases, believe it or not.
Mhm.
Things that you would have really in Milwaukee there,
Yeah.
we have in the parks. And
Okay.
that's kind of a lot of what we did.
Okay.
And I was also deputized as a deputy in the county in Gardner, Montana. And so I would go outside the park and assist the county when it was needed.
Okay. One of the stories, I hiked in Grand Teton a while back, and it was during a period where you weren't supposed to have any fires in the park due to fire danger.
Mhm.
And I remember we woke up one morning, we had our permits for one of the campsites, and probably 5 or 6 park rangers were just running down the trail with shovels. And I asked one of them what they were doing, and they said there were people in the park illegally starting fires or trying to start
Oh.
fires, and they were trying to catch them.
Mhm.
Wow.
And I was kind of like, we were kind of like, but they have all these shovels, so I guess after the fact, maybe they would use that to put any fires out that might have been started, or they're gonna hit them over the head with them. I don't know. But
That's
just-
what Nancy would do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would Nancy do?
WWND.
Yeah. That was, I just remember that sticking out when I was in the Tetons because they were, I mean, dead sprint down the trail trying to catch up to these guys.
Well, what trail were you on?
We went over the paintbrush divide.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we were camping somewhere on, I can't remember which side of it.
Lake Solitude, maybe.
Yeah, that does sound familiar. It was a lot of pines where we were camping. So that
Holly
whole part-
Lake.
Yeah, it was several years ago now, but yeah, it was
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
we went over the paintbrush divide,
Yeah.
and yeah, we got woken up one morning to these guys just stomping down the trail with shovels, like
Wow.
dead on sprint, trying to
See,
catch
you
them.
don't know when you're going to see a.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, park ranger could be anywhere at any time.
yeah,
Not so much now. Oh, we lost Nancy.
We lost her. She's gonna
Oh,
go
yeah.
tackle a bear real quick or
She
something.
might.
well,
She might,
we'll let her
yeah.
back in when she joins.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think. So you spent most of your time in Yellowstone and the
Mhm.
national forests around there. Okay.
Well, working in Yellowstone.
Okay.
But my last 5 years, I worked for the Washington Supervisory Office. We call it WASO for short.
Mhm.
And so I was able to start a victim assistance program through WASO. That's when I
Okay.
worked with mostly just victims of crime and responding to those kind of cases we were talking about and dealing with victims and getting them the assistance that they need. And
Yeah.
so I did that the last 5 years.
So I've got another question.
And then we'll have an audience question after yours.
Okay. So this one, I'm sure this guy was kind of the inspiration originally for me to start the podcast, but I'm sure you've heard of David Politis.
Oh, the missing 411
yeah.
guy? Yeah.
Yeah. So he's, I mean, I would imagine for people that work within the MPS, he's probably a pretty annoying figure.
I don't know who it is he actually bothers, but he claims he bothers people, but I don't know who those people are that he's getting his
Yeah, I don't
we're
know.
not getting his information from.
Yeah, so like he's got a new documentary coming out about disappearances in the national parks, and he kind of brought up the same thing that he's been saying for years. And I thought it'd be great to have two people that worked in the park, especially in law enforcement. So his claim is that there must be some conspiracy going on. The National Park Service is not keeping a list of missing persons, and it's like a conspiracy. Something bigger is going on in the park. You know, it's aliens or Bigfoot or something.
And you're retired now, so you can blow the lid off of all of this.
So,
And both of
Yeah.
our shows will skyrocket in ratings if you do. Just,
so I guess
Well,
I'm just curious what your thought is on his kind of, it's been a persistent thing of his for years that the Park Service is hiding something from everybody.
Well, I'm going to give you a very boring answer to that. And I think this is the answer and why
Yeah.
he keeps on it. But every park is its own entity. It's not stovepiped. I mean, there's some overhead leadership like in Washington office, and every park essentially keeps its own like stats, supposedly. There just isn't any database that there was one that they came out with several years ago and nobody knew how to use it. It took years and years and years for people to figure it out. And this is for law enforcement people to use, that, you know, you could learn about a case in another park, whatever, but that did not capture missing persons or disappearances or things like that. And so it's just disjointed. And I think if you, it's just a record keeping thing. And I don't think there's any, I'm all about conspiracies, but I don't think, I love a good conspiracy, but
I think you're
that-
lying.
No,
I think I think you're covering something up.
Yeah.
you're right.
Yeah.
I mean,
You know,
it's,
in the
yeah.
Forest Service is like that too. I mean, we supposedly had this great system that once we entered the information that I could tell if somebody got a ticket for poaching in Kentucky, I could tell that at Jewel Cave National Monument. And it didn't work that way. I mean, it just, you know, or somewhere in the Black Hills.
Yeah.
It just,
Yeah.
the
It sounds
theory
like
was
something
good.
that should exist.
Yes.
Like
it
if you-
should.
I
if
don't know why
interact
that's
with somebody-
hard. That
Yeah.
shouldn't be hard.
It shouldn't be hard.
You know, you've got all kinds of national databases, exploited and missing children, and but still, somebody has to enter that in. And if people in this park aren't entering it in, like Yosemite, where he says the hub is all the most missing, right? All the most missing people.
Yeah.
Which now I'm nervous because I'm going on a big hike in June to Yosemite in the backcountry with a former backcountry ranger there, and I'm like, okay, am I going to go missing here? So is the alien going to get me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think you're right. Everything I've read the same thing. It's its own entity, and then a lot of information and knowledge about specific parks kind of resides with the rangers working there. And then when they leave or retire, that information kind of goes with them.
Yeah.
And it's not always well documented. And it's just kind of the way it's always been. And I think the Park Service has always been underfunded. So, it's never been funded enough.
Yeah.
So I think David Place is wrong.
I do too.
Yeah.
It sells parks.
Let's call him out.
I did too.
Yeah.
Well, you guys are officially a part of Unknown Network, and
Yes.
Mike's got something cooking that could change the game in this field. We won't talk about it right now, but
Oh, well, I
the
mean,
database.
I've been working on building from the ground up a custom web application that has a map, and it's kind of think of like All Trails, but for missing persons,
Oh, yeah.
and to track every wilderness disappearance that has happened. We're kind of in the process of gathering all the data and
Yeah.
putting it together, because I originally started Locations Unknown as a website to kind of track, because I just found it fascinating that there's all these cases that can't be perfectly solved with a theory.
Right.
That Tara and
Especially
Nancy
with
are
the
covering up.
children.
Yeah.
That's right.
Especially the ones with children where literally they turned around and they were gone. And they
Yeah, just
couldn't find
gone.
it.
Yes.
Yeah. Those ones
Yeah.
are the weird ones to me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, and that's interesting hearing from you that's been out there, because you would expect if it was more normal, you would say, oh, yeah, that's common because here's why. But if it's weird to you guys also, that
That's
does make
weird.
it, that actually makes it more creepy for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we
But
would-
yeah.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna finish your point because I have a different question from a listener. So.
No, it was just going to be like, if it was an animal, you'd think you would see signs, you would see, clothes torn up, you would see evidence, drag marks. You just don't see those things. And that's what's weird on those ones. Getting that from that guy, David, what's his last name again?
Politis.
Yeah. I mean, I think those are strange ones, but anyway, sorry, go ahead.
So this is a question from Holly Eklund. She's a teen daughter. She said it earlier. She's a teen daughter that really admires both of you. She loves listening to the show. Her question was, is it hard to become a park ranger in Yellowstone, as an example, for most U.S. national parks, if you are not a law enforcement, or is that a requirement?
It is not a requirement.
No.
To be a law enforcement park ranger in the National Park Service, most people start out by they have these seasonal academies, law enforcement academies and then you can get hired seasonally. If you don't want to do law enforcement, it's like, maybe is that a requirement? I can't say right now with all the cuts. A lot of other jobs like interpretive ranger type jobs and general ranger jobs, those are kind of hard to come by, the general rangers. Interp usually hires people with degrees in stuff like not law enforcement, but like maybe environmental education. They hire people with degrees a lot of times. And in law enforcement, your degree could be criminal justice, or it could be underwater basket weaving. We don't really care. But to get in there on the ground in law enforcement, the best thing is to do a law enforcement academy, seasonal law enforcement academy. And you could just
more
Google
marketable
that.
if you do that.
And get your EMT. No matter what you do, get your EMT.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Excellent.
Okay.
And just always think, what would Nancy do?
What would Nancy do?
You guys
got to get shirts.
I was just going to say shirts, like the bracelets, the whole thing.
Yes. Yeah.
That could be a recurring theme of the show.
Yeah. I mean, actually, next time I'm hiking, I'll probably think of that.
I'm
Like-
100% going to think of that.
What would
Take
Nancy do?
pictures of like, what would Nancy do?
What
Obviously,
would Nancy do?
Hayes
She
the biggest
goes
person
in,
there and
yeah.
ride him as he goes down.
Yeah. Normally, like when I would work with a partner, if there was somebody, you ended up having to wrestle, because that does happen with drunks and people like that. And, somebody's tall and I'm short, and I'm like, all right, you go high, I go low, kind of joking. But Nancy and I are both the same height. We're kind of down here. And it's kind of, we're like those wrestlers on Nacho Libre. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
I feel like he could turn Nancy and me loose, and we would be like those wrestlers.
I just wish there was videos of all these things happening.
Too bad you don't have body cam footage of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank goodness we didn't have to wear that back then. Because
Yeah, we kind of just barely missed the body cam.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Off.
Be digital proof on that.
Right.
Yeah, you would be like the front page of like every park ranger rides a tased.
I mean, your show would be much bigger right now.
Yeah, the park
Yeah.
ranger
If
that.
you showed those clips, it sure would.
Oh
be.
yeah.
We do have on our show. We do mostly cover cases like crime,
Mhm.
like crime off the grid. But we also do ranger tales where we get rangers or former rangers to come on and tell a story, just their story. And sometimes they're, them investigating a horrific crime, or they're something like, the special response team in Yellowstone had to walk these llamas out that came from Hare Krishnas in a van. I mean, crazy stuff that you can't make up. There's so some of them are silly stories for the ranger tales, and some are pretty serious stories. We just recorded one where a ranger was involved in a shooting on the border, and he was telling that story. So it's kind of crazy. He's fine. But so
that'll come out in a couple
and
weeks.
people
so
seem
folks
to
should
like
listen to
the
that.
people seem to like the ranger tales. I think maybe Nancy and I might bore them a little bit if it's just us telling the story.
I don't think so. It might be. It's like it's really neat because it gives people a different perspective of what goes on the parks. Because everyone, I mean, even people that listen to our show, Mike and I hiked a lot, so it seems like it's not interesting to us. But then we get comments of like city slickers who are like afraid to go in the woods. And they're like, "Oh, we're living vicariously through your stories." And it's so just normal to us. So I'm sure,
Right.
like you riding a giant man who's tased, that's an outlier to you. That's pure insanity to me.
Yeah.
You're like, that's not a normal Tuesday, but it just happened. I'm like, that doesn't just happen.
Yeah.
In my life, I've never seen that ever.
Yeah. And Nancy and I think we had different experiences being women just in general and doing law enforcement. And sometimes it made things easier. Sometimes it made things harder. I can remember we would also do a lot of service things in the park, like people lock their keys out of their car. I love unlocking cars for people. And, some of us, there was another gal as a ranger, and we got really good at, and if we didn't want our male counterparts to get to the lockout before we did, because we liked unlocking them. And I can remember driving up to some guy that'd been sitting there in the hot sun, locked his keys in his truck. And as I rolled up, he's like, "Great, they sent a girl." And it's like,
He literally said that out loud.
Out loud. Oh,
so
great, they
you
sent
tased
a
him?
girl. I tased him, yeah. And I'm like, "Nancy, what would you do?" Okay, on it.
What would Nancy do? Tase him.
Staying on the taser thing, I went to Canyon one day with a trainee that I was training, and a guy jumped out of a 2-story window, and he was extremely intoxicated. So we were trying to arrest him, and we looked up, and there was 30 people surrounding us. And we put the guy in the car really quickly, and we stood back to back, and then we took off the cartridges and we spark tested as we're back to back and we're turning in a circle. And I said, "It isn't worth it." And then they all went, "Okay." And they all, "Hey," but you look up and see that, and it's just like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be bad.
We had one of those too in Canyon, and it was like Deliverance, and I'm hopefully you guys get that reference.
Yeah.
Like we were contacting someone who had a violation, whatever. It was in the dark, and all of a sudden these people just come out for more, and they look like
playing.
Yes, they look like Deliverance, and it was like, throw them in the car, get them to the ranger station because I didn't tase this guy, but he got tased, and he pulled off the probes, and we were like, "Oh my gosh, this is Deliverance." And,
that's terrifying when you tase somebody and they're like, "Nope."
Oh yeah.
Out, and you're like,
Yeah.
"Holy cow! What type of drugs are you on that you just like broke the laws of physics and just said no electricity? You can't."
Yeah.
That's why when Tara says you got to act quick, you definitely have to
You have
act
to
quick,
act quick. Mhm.
or you're gonna lose it.
Yeah.
You guys are like the Park Service John Wicks.
I don't know. I don't know about that. I mean, most of the time we're not beating people up or affecting arrests or tasing people. Most of our job really and truly as a park ranger is about helping people in the park not 90% of our job is like helping other people in the park. And I loved that. That's why I wanted to do that as opposed to just being a regular cop somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to be a cop in a park.
Yeah. 'Cause
Any
Well-
job in the park I would
'cause
love.
hopefully most of the time you're just out there hiking and talking with people.
Yeah.
Not tasing.
Well, there's freedom. I mean, like now they're really shorthanded and they're just running from call to call to call.
Yeah.
And they just don't have as much freedom, I think, as probably Nancy and I did, because it was wonderful just hanging out, at an overlook, at a pullout, and people coming up and asking questions. And then, then there would be that call and you would run off to that call. And as a ranger friend of mine said, hey, I got to go lights and siren and passing on curves. He thought that was fun. And, but, but yeah, so then it was a lot of talking to decent humans and then running to help other humans is what
That's awesome.
that job was.
Very
So,
fulfilling work.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I would say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Well,
Yeah.
I think we'll have to at some point do a longer interview episode with both of you. 'Cause
Absolutely.
I have so many more questions, and your job sounded so cool.
Yes.
I would trade what I do for during the day for what you guys did 1,000 times over. I think.
We've talked about this before, and I think I can count on one hand in 32 years how many times I said, I wish I didn't have to go to work today.
Yeah. Right.
It
That's
it
not
was
very
rare.
many of those. Yeah,
That's
not
that's
many.
Love the job.
fantastic. Both
Yeah.
are very blessed, and thank you very much for starting your show, and B, agreeing to meet with us and start this whole venture. And this has been a lot of fun. It's been great getting
thank
to know you
you.
both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been
No,
great.
this has been great. I tell people who we belong to, you guys, your group, and it's actually helped us a lot, and we
That's
really
great.
appreciate it.
No,
Yeah.
I'm
do.
glad.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to do. That's
Yeah.
what we've always been very big about the spaces. This isn't a competition thing. We've always
Right.
looked at it as we can all help each other grow. And it's such a the outdoor true crime genre community is super small. So it's awesome that we get to all know all the people. National Park
Yeah.
After Dark is huge, and they just came
Yeah.
on the show because
Yeah.
it's such a small
Yeah.
space.
Yeah.
You guys are going to get bigger than us soon, and that's going to be awesome. So you just make sure you take us with you. And then, no, this is going to be a lot of fun continuing to grow this.
Thank
And
you.
the
Can
neat
I
thing
one-
is,
go ahead.
you guys, is we did the Into the Wild. We did the Magic
We
Bus
did that. We did the
142,
Magic Bus too.
And
Oh.
Well,
it
we are
was-
going on a cruise in Alaska.
Yes.
Yeah.
Through the Association of National Parks and
Rangers.
ANPR, Association of National Park Rangers. They partner with Royal Caribbean to provide speakers on Alaska cruises, and so Nancy are going to be speakers on one of the cruises, and so we have to do everything about Alaska, and we did that one on our podcast so that we can present it there
Awesome.
as well. And
Well,
I do
yeah.
want to say one more thing about the Unknown Media Group, and the thing
Okay.
that I like about that space. We kind of like closure. Like our cases all are adjudicated if they're a case or they're closed cases. And you guys do all that other mystery stuff, which I'm not able in my brain to research.
Yeah.
And I think that is such a good compliment to everybody in the Unknown Media group, is that, there's the mystery people, there's the true crime case closed people.
Yes.
So I think it complements a lot.
That's fantastic. And that actually answered the question. So Michelle Medic, she was the one that guest hosts a couple times, and her husband are starting another show that's focusing mainly on Alaska. So you're going to have to go on
wow.
her show.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of synergy that's happening organically. And it's kind of like when we met and talked about the group, I always say, I like to do cool shit with cool people. And magic happens when you do that. And you guys are great. I knew from the first meeting that it was going to be awesome. Keep doing your show. And then there's always going to be synergies. We'll definitely have you on our show again to talk more stories. You'll have to go on Michelle's show when she gets it off the ground. But no, we appreciate you guys so much. And thanks for doing this too. And we just hope we can help you keep growing and getting bigger and bigger.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thanks for the
This
invite,
was
guys.
fun.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was awesome.
Have a good rest of your night.
All right, thank you.
See ya. Welcome back. So I really hoped you enjoyed that interview with Crime Off the Grid. we had a lot of fun talking with them. Their stories are so cool. I could spend hours talking to them about their experiences in the national park, and I hope down the road very soon we get to do another interview with them, because I'm sure they have a lot of other things to tell us that we weren't able to touch on in the interview. So that is the episode for this week. Remember, if you want to support the show, you can find us on all of the social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube. You can also support us through Patreon, YouTube subscriptions, Apple subscriptions, Spreaker subscriptions, all that stuff, our Facebook store. And remember this, if you don't remember anything else I ever tell you, when enjoying the beautiful wonders of our national park, always remember to leave no trace. Thank you, and I will see you again next week.